welcome in to Full Court Blitz. How's it going, everybody? It's KJ McCurley, Alex Baumann with you again. And as always, these two old voices got a lot to talk about, Mr. Baumann. But hey, first things first, due to me being under the weather and some other foreseeable circumstances over the weekend, we're going to decide to change things up a little bit with the content. We got some new segment name for you guys, and we're going to start off with a little SEC spotlight. Alex has worked really hard on this over the last few days. I was really excited to see the ideas he has because, as always, fresh eyes are always so important. That's why there's two of us. Two are greater than one, and I am so excited to let Alex get these segments underway with some SEC spotlight. Mr. Baumann, the host mic is now yours.
Back in my old shoes, I used to host a podcast of my own with two buddies, so I'm back in the saddle, as they say, trying to get this thing rolling for this show today. Like you talked about, KJ, the SEC spotlight. We picked three big SEC games, and we're going to go in depth with those. But we're not going to ignore the other SEC games going on this weekend. We're going to talk about all those in a Blitz pick segment where we pick them. We're not going to spend 10, 15 minutes on each matchup. We might spend a couple more minutes on one matchup or the other if they're bigger. But these are the three matchups we're going to spend the most time talking about this week. The first one being number 6, Georgia, going to Neyland Stadium to take on number 15, Tennessee. Last year was a struggle for Tennessee, didn't end up winning that football game, and Georgia has won the past 4 meetings at Neyland Stadium by an average of 30.5 points, and Georgia has won 8 straight against Tennessee, all by at least 14 points. The last time Tennessee won was 2015. So, KJ, you've seen both these teams play back-to-back weeks, Georgia not being tested really, playing Marshall and Austin Peay, and then Tennessee facing a semi-tough team in Syracuse, lost a lot of starters. We talked about that game in one of our first 2 podcasts, but they won that game, and they played East Tennessee State last week. Both teams pretty different in the way they play football. Georgia leans on their defense a lot. Tennessee has a high-powered offense led by quarterback Joey Aguilar, and the running backs, the trio of them being Peyton Thomas, Star Thomas, and Deshaun Bishop, really talented running back, or Peyton Lewis, Star Thomas, and Deshaun Bishop, and they've really leaned on that running game since last year with Dylan Sampson. But KJ, who do you have winning this game this week?
Well, listen, I don't think it's any secret, as you just called out the streak going, that the Bulldogs have had some luck against the Volunteers as of late. It's been a while since you've seen the tide turn a little bit, but I got to be honest with you, Alex. You mentioned those meetings of a margin win of 30. That is astounding for this rivalry. And when I was looking at that, I just kept getting the feeling that I just don't know that the field's going to be that lopsided this weekend. I really am a fan of what I've seen from Joey Aguilar so far to start. You mentioned what I think is a pretty decent football team in Syracuse that he absolutely carved up, and particularly in the second half, the running back by trio that the Volunteers have going on. Listen, I like Georgia's offense trying to recoup from all of the drops last year that they gave Carson Beck, and there was a lot of those. But you know, even though I do like Gunnar Stockton and I like Nate Frazier, there's nothing so far this year in the performances that indicate to me that they're going to run away with this. It's the defense for Georgia has looked pretty good, but you alluded to the opposition, Austin Peay and Marshall, and that's like man, that's pretty easy way to start the year. And then to go from that into Neyland Stadium, Alex, I'm going to take the Volunteers on this one. I like Tennessee in this game for a little bit of an early on in the year upset. I think Georgia's sitting a little too pretty than they need to be right now. And I think Tennessee's going to come out and play inspired football.
Yeah, two parts of the teams. Both teams have key injuries. Georgia's offensive line, you had Juan Gaston, their right guard, and their right tackle, Ernest Green, deal with injuries last week against Austin Peay. The backup right tackle, Jaw Jackson, who, if you pay attention to viral basketball, he was a teammate of Bronny James back in high school. He's now playing right tackle for Georgia, crazy enough. But dealing with those injuries, that's going to be tough for Georgia, but they have not given up a sack all year. Them and Tennessee are among the only 12 teams in the nation to not allow a sack this season going into this weekend. And then Tennessee, you look at them down both starting quarterbacks. Jermon McCoy still recovering from his ACL, and Ricky Gibson III dealing with an arm injury. They're starting a freshman in Ty Redmond, as well as a sophomore in Colton Hood, who actually spent his freshman year at Auburn. Those are two key things to look at going into this game: Georgia's offensive line and Tennessee's defensive backfield. But the keys for Tennessee in this game for me, they got to put pressure on Gunnar Stockton. This is his first time in a true road environment going to Neyland Stadium, and this is one of the toughest places to play in college football. The fans are rowdy. From an Alabama fan's perspective, who has watched those games, hasn't been to one yet, would love to go to one, has heard experiences of other fans going to these games. Those fans hate the opposing opponent fans,
especially when it's Georgia.
Yeah, especially when it's Georgia and Alabama. They're probably most hated rivals. Gotta put pressure on him. Keep those young, inexperienced DBs from having to sit back in coverage. So putting that pressure on Gunnar Stockton prevents those DBs from having to sit in coverage for 5-6 seconds. If you let Gunnar Stockton sit back there and just dice up your defense, get the defense off the field. Last year, when defensive coordinator Banks, when his defense was on the field for a long time, there was a lot of breakdowns and coverages and some penalties that on those long drives. So get off the field if you're the Tennessee defense, which can be effective against this Georgia offense, which has really struggled in these first 2 weeks. And then offensively, lean on that running game, but you have to make Joey Aguilar a threat. He can be a threat with his legs. He was that way at App State. He's shown flashes in the first 2 games, but you can't just hand the ball off to your three-headed monster at running back in Bishop, Thomas, and Lewis. You have to make Georgia honor Joey Aguilar's legs, because as you saw last year with Jalen Milroe in the first half against Georgia, when they didn't respect his legs, he made them pay. So you got to allow Joey Aguilar to get loose at running the football, but as well as throwing it. Just make that defense of Georgia tired. If you can tire them out, I don't believe Georgia has the same depth they've had in the past on that defensive side of the football. And then for Georgia, you got to stretch the Tennessee defense vertically with the speedster Zachariah Branch coming over from USC. They have really struggled to do that in their first 2 games. Gunnar Stockton has been a checkdown warrior, as I would call it. He's got to stretch the Tennessee defense if you're going to give running room for guys like Nate Frazier, who is one of the most talented players on that offense. And then the defense has to avoid giving up chunk plays, because as anybody who has watched Tennessee under Josh Heupel, they might be gritty, but where he makes his money is getting those chunk plays, because he lures you in. He runs that football. He throws those screen passes. But then as soon as you start creeping up to that line of scrimmage, he hits you straight down the field to a deep bomb, to a Jalen Hyatt or a Squirrel White that he's done in years past. So for Georgia, you cannot let Tennessee hit those long bomb plays, because if you do, in a hostile environment, those are momentum-changing plays in a football game like this. I think Tennessee beats the streak. I love what they have on offense. They're one of the best offenses going into this game, but granted, their opponents are not great. And I just don't think Georgia has enough talent on defense. Not saying they don't have any talent, because Georgia always has talent under Kirby Smart. I just don't think they have the same talent to keep up with the Tennessee offense that has fired on all cylinders thus far.
Yeah, you mentioned the depth. They have a lot of freshmen starting, in particular on the back end, a lot of sophomores, and those underclassmen on defense can sometimes be very, very good, but a lot different when you go from those guys being backups to a senior starting to guys like Jalen Carter and then that type of talent, the Kobe Dean now in the league. We could talk about a lot of Georgia defenders. Just don't tell Jalen Carter to watch his spitting.
We're about to talk about a team that loves to spit, KJ.
Oh, boy.
The Florida Gators taking on number 3 LSU in Death Valley. The real Death Valley, Clemson fans, if you're listening. This game last year, Florida ended up beating LSU 27-16, and this was the game that jump-started their 4-game winning streak to end the season and really save Billy Napier's job, which if you're asking Florida fans right now, they may be praying that 4-game winning streak didn't happen. If you've seen the viral clips after last week's game, there was a
Fire Billy. Oh yeah, I thought that
was. It was like a whole gathering. It almost reminded me of when I went to the Iron Bowl with 4th and 31, when all the Auburn fans were gathered in the lower bowl because they thought they were going to rush the field. And then the 4th and 31 happened. That's how that crowd looked and how distraught they looked after the game, after they watched.
Instead of fire, Harsin, there were probably a few expletives in there.
The coaching job that was done and some execution from some certain players were pretty poor in that game against USF, where they ended up losing. KJ, who do you have winning this matchup? Because they're hungry. This is a game where if Billy Napier doesn't put up a fight, I really do think Florida could be looking at an interim head coach after this weekend. But LSU, a lot of people are high on them. They're ranked number 3 in the AP poll. I don't put a lot of stock in the AP poll. Just this week in general, I've seen so many clips of some of the voters and their polls in general, just how bad they are and the reasoning behind them. LSU hasn't looked great either. I know they're number 3, but they haven't looked all inspiring. Who do you have winning this matchup?
Yeah, you said it right there. LSU, we talked about this in a few segments back before the season started, and we had to see how good Nussmeier was going to be throwing the football. And he's looked okay at times, and he's held on to the ball too long, taking some sacks, forced some throws as well. Florida does boast a pretty good interior defensive line, except when they're spitting. But outside of that, you don't look at Florida's defense like in years past, where you have guys like Vernon Hargraves and guys like who is some of the other Florida DBs that have. There was a streak right there where Florida was having 2 and 3 DBs make the All-Pro team all year in SEC every year, and Gilchrist, the guys like that. You don't have that big hitter.
Marco Wilson when he threw the shoe.
Marco Wilson, oh yeah. I think that was the one I was trying to think of. You don't have those big hitters on the back end to help save points. And I got to be honest with you, I didn't look at the quarterback, because there's 2 people that the fans always want to blame in a big-time loss like that. The coach and the quarterback. And the coach being blamed, Billy Napier, good reason, especially the clock management, letting a minute and a half dwindle down and then deciding to use your timeouts. If they were important to you, you should have called them earlier. And to me, I think Billy Napier is coaching for his job. You mentioned last year getting back into the season, inspiring Florida fans. They actually inspired the Florida front office, too. They went out and gave the guy an extension because, hey, win-loss-wise, we might not be looking great, but we like the trajectory of where this team could be headed. And Alex, I got to look at the quarterback, DJ Lagway, and say, yeah, he maybe missed 2 or 3 throws, but much similar to Alabama's situation against Florida State with Ty Simpson, every time I watched DJ Lagway, it seemed like there was a USF Bull defender in his face before even being able to get to his second read. Gatorade Player of the Year or not, you cannot ask a young quarterback to consistently bail your offensive line out. And his inability, speaking of Billy Napier, to help his young athlete. You knew 2 years ago Lagway wanted to come play for you. You should have hit right then and finding some real offensive linemen that can step up and give this guy a clean pocket. They've got the receivers. They've got a pretty good 2-headed monster at running back. And they've got DJ Lagway. There's no reason for them to not be able to figure it out. All of that said, LSU has too much on offense in their own backyard. I say LSU wins pretty convincingly in the 4th quarter. Expect some first half, maybe 3rd quarter fight from the Gators, but I don't think there's any way we could see a close game in the 4th.
You mentioned the offensive line for Florida, KJ. That was their strength going into the season. Returned 4 or 5 starters, your right tackle being the lone replacement you had to make, and he's been pretty bad, the new one they've had, but it's not all his fault. You have 4 starters to help him out. And it's not only pass blocking, it's run blocking. Two of your most talented weapons on offense, Jaden Ball and Jacoby Jackson, who you talked about last week, KJ, they don't have any running lanes. And when they're in the backfield, they're having to juke defenders in the backfield to create their own space.
Having to make 4 guys miss before the second level.
It's almost like Tank Bigsby at Auburn. If you watch those games, Tank Bigsby was having to juke 15 guys in the backfield almost to get a yard. you got to help your players, and to have an offensive line play the way Florida has played, and that being Billy Napier's strength, what he's known for when he was at Louisiana, that's what everybody talked about, is how good his offensive lines were there in a group of 5 school. He even turned a couple of guys pro that got drafted high. And the defense, it's been bad under Billy Napier since he took over, and it's not any different this year. They've only recorded 1 sack in 2 games, that one being from Tyreek Sapp. And when you're going to play an LSU team who themselves has problems on offense, running the football, they're last in the SEC in yardage per game, that's also been an issue for them last year. I just don't see a way the Florida defense is able to keep LSU off the field. LSU continues to dominate time of possession, almost 37 minutes a game in both games. I'm going to go LSU as well. I don't think it's as convincing as you say it is, KJ. I think Florida puts up a little bit of a fight because they know their head coach is on the chopping block. They're going to put a little bit of a fight up. But what LSU has done defensively this year has been nothing short of outstanding. Baker, the defensive coordinator there was a lot of question marks after last year towards the end of the season, the collapse they had, the highlight being the Jalen Milroe game where he just ran all over them, and he knew that's what Jalen Milroe was going to do. But the defense has answered the bell with the offense struggling. They did their job against Clemson. Anybody that watched that game knows they won in that football game. They did great last week when LSU's offense didn't look up to par against a Louisiana team that they should, or a La Tech team they should have ran out of the field with. I just think LSU, they figure it out at home against a pretty good Florida team, and they have enough to beat the Gators. Last game we're going to preview, KJ, the last in-depth preview with the SEC Spotlight. Not going 2 SEC teams here. Number 16, Texas A&M, traveling to number 8, Notre Dame. I'm a big Notre Dame fan, but KJ, who do you think wins this matchup?
Alex, I love that we're previewing this. Listen, we've got accustomed to see Notre Dame playing pretty good football over the last, 8-10 years, but it always seems like they win just enough to get in the playoff, or they win just enough to clinch an appearance in a good game, and they have not been able to get over that SEC Big Ten hump. This game is a wonderful opportunity for them to do that, and that's not a disrespect thing to Texas A&M, because listen, I had them as a dark horse team coming into the year. At first, I kind of had them on our first studs and duds power rankings. I kind of had them very bottom of studs, middle of the pack, leaning towards duds, simply because I just didn't know how the offensive line for the Aggies was going to be. I knew Marcel Reed was an outstanding player. They have great running back production in Reuben Owens, Amari Daniels. I just think Le'Veon Moss, most notably. I just think Texas A&M has a lot on offense, and they have just enough on defense. Listen, this is going to go down as, I don't know if you call any loss a good loss, but if the game goes the way I think it will, I think this is going to be a really hard-fought loss for either team. And I think Texas A&M has the edge because of that ability to run the football and keep the defense honest. I think Texas A&M can go into South Bend and potentially beat Notre Dame. I will not be surprised if Notre Dame has an outstanding game rushing the ball as well. Obviously, that's their bread and butter with Jeremiah Love. Kind of a quiet start to the season for him. And at home against an SEC team, he's going to be ready to prove that he has what it takes. I think this could be a shootout. I'm so glad that this game is early in the year. I'm glad we have week 2 and week 3 showdowns, and it's not dud, 1, 2, and 3 week. I'm so glad that we have these matchups. I also really like linebacker Scooby Williams for Texas A&M. I think he's a really hard hitter, and I think he's going to come in and meet some of those Jeremiah Love runs in the hole at the point of attack. I just like what Texas A&M can do. I'm a believer in them at this moment, so I'm going to take the Aggies on the road in Notre Dame.
Keeping the SEC homer in you, KJ. I think I've talked about it a couple weeks ago when we talked about Notre Dame's game. I love Notre Dame. I think they have all the talent in the world. Their offensive weapons are the best they've ever been. The defense boasts a lot of talented players, even at linebacker where they lost their leading tackler and Jack Kaiser to the NFL. I worry about A&M. I'm not sold on Marcel Reed as a quarterback. When he senses pressure in the pocket, he kind of freaks out, gets happy feet, has a little Jalen Hurts in him when he was a freshman at Alabama, where he senses that pressure and just runs. There's no looking down the field to find that open receiver. He takes unnecessary hits at times. I'm just worried about him going into a hostile environment against Notre Dame, who has one of the better defenses in the country. They're gonna make him make mistakes. They're gonna put him in situations where it's either you throw it that way or it's a turnover. I love Notre Dame so much in their team this year. I just worry for Notre Dame about their offensive line, because that's the main reason they lost to Miami. Is they had a chance at the end of the game, but their offensive line didn't hold up protection for C.J. Carr. There was a point towards the end of that game in that last drive where the right tackle was spun around looking at his quarterback while the edge rusher was sacking their quarterback. You can't have that happen.
No.
So you have to block better going against a Texas A&M team that's going to put pressure on you. A&M has the leading sack getter in the SEC in Cassius Howell. He's tied for first alongside a couple of guys, including Auburn's Kieron Crawford. Had to protect him, C.J. Carr, and let your running back duo do their work. That also includes blocking. You had to let Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price get loose, because you can have C.J. Carr play great, but you can't be one-dimensional. LSU knows all about that. They're a little one-dimensional, and if you go and play an opponent like A&M one-dimensional, you're going to pay the price. I still think Notre Dame wins this game leaning on their defense. They just have to play better all around to beat a Texas A&M team that's going to come in and have something to prove.
Yeah, I think the defense that can get a turnover in the first half will be set up for success. I think offense should be at a premium, but I'll be interested to see how that game starts out.
Before we get into our pick'em, KJ, this is one of our new segments here. It's upset alert. We have to decide each week which SEC team should be on upset alert this weekend. And KJ, who do you have listed on your upset alert?
Well, Alex, it's a team that you called out, I guess, for being a little too overrated. And I'm going to come to defense on your point here in week 3 and say that the South Carolina Gamecocks' undefeated streak will come to an end against Vanderbilt. Listen, you can get upset that he's still playing, all that you want, but Diego Pavia is on the field for the Commodores. And as long as Diego Pavia is on the field for the Commodores, Vandy has a chance. And I just don't think South Carolina has done enough this year. We talked about it would be a close game with them and Virginia Tech, and sure enough, until the fourth quarter, it was. Now, of course, Lenora Sellers' outstanding run at the end of the game. Don't want to take anything away from that young man, but I'm seeing some comparisons to Cam Newton.
Cam Newton did a whole lot better than that.
Just stop it, man, because you missed some point-blank, easy 5- and 8-yard window throws. And I think Vanderbilt has just enough on defense and just enough weapons on offense to score a few more times early, and I think the Commodores get the job done against South Carolina, and South Carolina's highest ranking in several years will plummet after this weekend. I like Vanderbilt in this game.
I think it's a travesty that Vanderbilt's not ranked. Josh Pate talked about it on his show. If you dressed Vanderbilt's resume in Alabama clothes, they'd be ranked in the top 5 right now. But just because it's Vanderbilt, they're not ranked. It's another travesty with the AP poll and the voters that they continue to get that are lackluster at best and just vote for their favorite teams. But I digress. My upset alert team this week is going to be the Ole Miss Rebels. They are taking on the Arkansas Razorbacks. Arkansas is coming to Ole Miss to play them. Last year's game was pretty bad for the Razorbacks. Ole Miss ended up scoring 63 points against them. Arkansas stood no chance. But I think this Arkansas team is coming in a lot better than they were at this point last year. Talon Green has played outstanding. Granted, it's against Alabama A&M on Arkansas State, but he has made the throws that you would see him miss last year, the easy layups, even the close passes where you were like, is he going to complete that pass? It's a tight window, and he missed it. But this year, he's hitting those throws. We all know he's great with his legs. The running back duo they got with him, Mike Washington Jr. and Braylon Russell, can give him 2 different weapons in that backfield, Braylon Russell being the hammer, Mike Washington being a little bit of the speedster. The receiver weapons, you lose Isaac Tesla, who's doing great things with the Lions right now. The receiving room's not world changing. It's not Alabama's receiving room. It's not Auburn's receiving room. It's not even Georgia's receiving room. But their weapons there, Omega Blake, who I think has one of the coolest names in college football. He's been the weapon for Taylon Green, 185 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns in 2 games. But the thing I look at for Arkansas that has shown improvement over this year has been the defense. Their linebacker duo of Xavier Sorey Jr. and Steven Dix Jr. Have combined for 30 tackles on the year. I think they're going to be dominant in this game, and Quincy Rhodes, one of their edge rushers, is one of the 3 people tied for first in the SEC with 3 sacks. And I have just not been impressed with Austin Simmons this year in his first 2 games. No. Started off the Kentucky game with two interceptions. Kentucky went out to a 10-0 lead, and Kentucky ended up losing that game to Ole Miss. But Kentucky, we all know they're probably going to end up being the worst team in the SEC this year after what we saw from Mississippi State this past weekend. And if you throw those 2 interceptions against an Alabama or an Arkansas, even in Arkansas, I think Arkansas is able to capitalize on those interceptions where Kentucky really wasn't. And yeah, Ole Miss has the best running back stat-wise in the SEC in Kejuan Lacey. Arkansas has the guys up front to keep up with him and kind of keep him at bay and make Austin Simmons throw the passes. Again, I'm not a believer in Austin Simmons. I don't think he can beat an Arkansas defense that's hungry, a coaching staff that has this season to prove themselves. Sam Pittman's on the hot seat, and I think he gets off the hot seat with this one here.
Yeah, I really like your notes and your prediction with that game as well, because you are right. And we called this. I specifically said, hey, guys, don't be surprised to see those Rebels struggle in Lexington, even though it was kind of bulletin board material from the losing the playoffs against them last year. Alex, they still found a way to make Kentucky stay in the game, and they did it with turnovers, shooting themselves in the foot. And to your point, I was high on Taylon Green last year at Auburn, even though he didn't have wowing stats. The build, the athleticism, the leadership as a freshman last year would just go pick up a receiver for dropping a pass, just get things you really want to see out of your quarterback. So shout out to that young man, and I think that could be another upset as well. Wouldn't be surprised at all to see your pick come to fruition.
And it's worth noting, Travis Williams, the defensive coordinator at Arkansas, his main philosophy is putting pressure on the quarterback and forcing the turnovers. And if you do that to Austin Simmons, he's going to give you turnovers. And if he does what we've seen in the first 2 weeks of the football season, he's going to give you 2 or 3 interceptions or a fumble here. He has not lived up to the hype, and I don't mean to down the kid. I think he has all the talent in the world to be a great quarterback under Lane Kiffin. It's just the first 2 weeks against a Kentucky team that's not a great football team in the SEC and their first opponent. I'm just not sold on him being able to lead this Ole Miss team to the college football playoff in year 1. All right, here is the big segment for the Pick'em, KJ. It's the Blitz Picks. We're going to go through all the SEC matchups we did not go through previously, so we're not going to sit here and pick the A&M Notre Dame game or anything like that. We've already picked those games. We're going to go through the remaining SEC slate, and we're going to somewhat quickly pick the winner and loser of the matchup.
All right, let's do it.
All right, the first one, Wisconsin travels to number 19, Alabama.
Yeah, well, here you have a 73-point shellacking to ULM. Yeah, I know it was ULM, but it was still good for Alabama to get back to winning ways and establish confidence on offense. Jeremy Bernard has just been outstanding through 2 weeks this year. Got to see a little glimpse of Keelan Russell. May not see the field here unless Alabama's just all on them early. I think the Tide defense has a great day this weekend, and I think Alabama wins by 7-10 against Wisconsin.
I'm going with Alabama, keeping my Alabama homer status strong. Wisconsin's dealing with some quarterback injury issues, starter, backup. I don't think it's going to make a difference. Alabama, they're hungry. Rare thing, Alabama has something to prove in this matchup. Can they actually beat a tough opponent? And they're going to do it in this one. Next game, KJ, number 13, Oklahoma, weirdly enough, travels to play the Temple Owls.
Yeah, Oklahoma at Temple, and honestly, I think they may send out a few water boys that supply the Gatorade cups in between segments because, as you said, I don't think it's really going to matter which unit plays against Temple. Temple has no chance at the Sooners' high-powered offense. Oklahoma should win big.
I'm going Oklahoma as well. There's no reason to waste any more time on that one. I don't think Temple holds a candle to Oklahoma. It's a good tune-up game for their upcoming slate, which is pretty difficult, as we've talked about on past shows. The next fairly easy game to pick from, South Alabama travels to take on number 24 Auburn.
Yeah, we got that number 24 ranking in front of us. Thank you, Alex. It's been a long time coming for us Auburn faithful. Man, some painful seasons. Just glad to see some confidence flowing in this year's team, even though it's only 2 games in. And South Alabama, not a wonderful opponent, but as you said, another confidence booster. Be another game for Jackson Arnold to warm up some passes a little bit. Defense looked way better last week. Hope to see that trend continue. I think Auburn wins big at home.
I'm going Auburn wins big at home. Another game where you can just get better and get Jackson Arnold comfortable throwing the football, because we know Auburn's going to be great running the football if what we saw against Baylor is any indication. Next, Louisiana travels to take on number 25 Missouri, another new addition to the top 25.
Yeah, listen, I was really glad to see that from Missouri as well. Missouri really coming on strong to start the year. I think they're getting some respect finally. I like what they can do on offense. Louisiana just pretty much coming to be compensated at this point. I think Missouri wins by a big margin.
If that's Louisiana, Billy Napier's Louisiana, I might pick something different, but I'm going to go Missouri here. Might be a little closer in that first quarter than people expect, but Missouri has proven these first 2 weeks their offense is high-powered, their defense is good. I'm going Missouri. Another semi, I guess you could call it a cupcake game here. UTEP taking on number 7 Texas.
Yeah, we were really high on Texas to start the year, and I'm still not against them by any means of the imagination, but Arch Manning hadn't particularly looked the best. But again, we're playing UTEP, so Texas by a big margin, unless something just absolutely unforeseeable happens and Steve Sarkisian has a stroke.
Taking Texas as well. Another game here. The Fighting Steve McNairs, Alcorn State takes on Mississippi State. Who you got there?
Mississippi State's going to win this game huge. I mean, let's shout out the Bulldogs. We have consistently called them one of the bottom of the barrel teams. And roster-wise, Alex, they still probably are at the bottom of the pile. But to see them go out and beat an Arizona State team who is still very good, not losing much of their production from last year's team at all, it was really big for the SEC, I think, and it's a testament to how deep this league is. Mississippi State's going to continue that train and beat Alcorn State by as much as they'd like to.
Taking Mississippi State as well. That win last week, I believe, is program defining for Jeff Lebby. Everybody's been down on this program. They've struggled since the passing of Mike Leach. He's got them turned in the right direction. Now, do I think they're going to go 10-2 and make the college football playoff? No. But are they going to be better than last year? They already are. Beating Arizona State is a huge landmark for Jeff Lebby in the program, and I'll expect better things for him and the Bulldogs. Next one, Arkansas. We already talked about this a little bit. KJ, Arkansas taking on number 17 Ole Miss. You know my take. I'm taking the Arkansas Razorbacks. Are you following suit with me, or are you going to take the hometown Ole Miss Rebels?
No, I'm going to go with you, and I'm going to pick another upset happening as well with Arkansas handling business against Ole Miss. I like what Arkansas has in that game.
All right, the next game, Eastern Michigan traveling to take on the Kentucky Wildcats, who are actually starting a new quarterback in Cutter Boley is his last name. So, new starting quarterback for the Wildcats. You taking them, or are you going to take the Eastern Michigan to upset them? Home of Max Crosby.
Look, I don't know a whole lot about Eastern Michigan, but I've seen enough of Kentucky to know that I'm not really sure it matters who they put at quarterback. The offense just may not get the job done this year. They got to have help from their defense. I don't think Eastern Michigan makes enough mistakes to let Kentucky score off of them, and I think Eastern Michigan could spoil the day of the Kentucky faithful. I think Eastern Michigan is going to win.
I'm still going to take Kentucky. Too much riding on this game for them. This is a must-win game for Mark Stoops and his difficult SEC schedule, kind of like Billy Napier's must-win was USF, and he didn't get it. If Mark Stoops loses this game, I'm not sure how he keeps his job. And the last game of the week, KJ, you said this is your upset pick. Vanderbilt traveling to take on number 11 South Carolina. So anything else you want to add to your comments about Vanderbilt beating the Gamecocks.
No, just that I don't know that there's enough out of the run ability of Lenora Sellers and maybe one downfield shot to Nick Harbor that you might see. I don't think South Carolina is built to play four-quarter football with the upper echelon of the SEC right now. They haven't shown me enough, and playing that hot Vandy team that's probably a little irritated. Hey, you got a bunch of ranked teams from the league, and we're not one of them. We hadn't lost. What's going on? I think you could see Vanderbilt play really inspired football, and I think they get the job done versus South Carolina. I think Eli Stowers will go crazy. Dylan Stewart probably going to bring a lot of pressure off the edge, meaning you're not going to really have a whole lot of solid help covering Eli Stowers, and that's Diego Pavia's best target. I think Vanderbilt runs wild Saturday.
Both these teams I guess Vanderbilt last week struggled in the first half, but then they came out of halftime and they just said, you know what, pedal to the metal, we're going hard. Outgained Virginia Tech 307-21 and outscored them 34-0 to just demolish them in that second half. And if Virginia Tech was anything of a second half team, they might have 2 SEC wins to start the season. But they got in the second half and they just disappeared in both games against Vanderbilt and South Carolina. Vanderbilt's weapons offensively, they're going to run the football down your throat. South Carolina have not been impressed with them at all. They've really relied on their special teams. They've had 3 punt returns combined in both games. Highly recommend Vanderbilt don't punt it to Vicari Swain. He will return it. Don't do it. But I'm not a believer in this offense right now. Lenora Sellers has struggled all season long. The running game, I've had people tell me that Faison, their running back from Utah State, who was a 1,000-yard rusher last year, was going to be this game-changing guy. He was going to help the running game with Rocket Sanders gone. Haven't seen it. 61 yards in 2 games. Oscar Attaway, the backup, has done much better, 80 yards and a touchdown in 2 games. I'm just not sold on this South Carolina offense to be able to keep up with Vanderbilt. If Vanderbilt plays the way they did in that second half, which I expect them to do in a matchup where they're coming in to prove it, rank us, they're going to beat South Carolina. All right, that wraps up the Blitz picks, KJ. We're moving on to these final 2 things before we take a timeout. These are new segments here. We're going to do them every week. The first one being In the Hot Seat. Every week, we're going to talk about which player, team, and or coach has the most to prove this weekend and is in the hot seat. So, KJ, who do you have in your hot seat?
Well, there's a lot of speculation. I think with one of our close teams in Alabama's Kalen DeBoer, a lot of Tide fans after the week 1 maybe overreacted just a little bit. Don't know if it's quite hot seat time for him, but if the trend does not continue in what we saw last week, be worth circling back around. I'm going to make a surprising claim right here because not that it's been awful by stretches of wins and losses over last year and this year, Alex, but they just have not looked very good and has so many NIL donors and all of this. You're at USC, at Lincoln Riley, and you're not wiping these lower echelon teams off the face of the earth on your schedule, and it just begs the question: what are you doing with all of this money? That USC. I mean, it's the Alabama of California, right? I mean, they have donors left and right, former players dumping in. I'm not sure that USC is going to continue being content with how much they are paying Lincoln Riley for them to not even make appearances in big-time championship football, no playoff appearances. It's getting to the point to where they may come knocking on his door. That's kind of a lower echelon one. Luke Fickell at Wisconsin really hasn't done a whole lot yet, but that could change this week depending on what happens with the game versus the Tide. Those are my few picks right now. Brent Pry, Virginia Tech, another one as well.
He's had, to his defense, though, he's had a rough 2 weeks with his SEC schools. Some scheduling issues there if you're Virginia Tech scheduling back-to-back opponents, Vanderbilt and South Carolina.
Yeah, the guy that made the schedule won't be getting a Christmas card from their family.
I'm going to take some low-hanging fruit here. We talked about it earlier in the show. Billy Napier and Florida, they had the most to prove this weekend. Napier's .500 in his 4 seasons at Florida, 6-7 and 5-7 the past 2 seasons. He's 10-14 in the SEC and only 4 ranked wins against opponents. He also has a losing record against all their rivals, Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida State. What Florida fans expect is not what Billy Napier has delivered. They expect every year to be in contention for the college football playoff and a national championship, and he has brought them nowhere close to that in his 4 years as the head coach, and hasn't really shown any signs of improvement. As I just talked about, 6-7 and 5-7, you're sitting at the same record almost. He has to show improvement here this weekend, like I talked about. It's going to make or break Billy Napier's time at Florida. He's got a lot on his plate. The schedule does not get any easier, as we've talked about numerous times on this podcast. And if you're Florida, if you move on from Billy Napier, who do you go out and get? Dan Lanning. I looked at some lists today from some notable sports writers out there. Dan Lanning has been mentioned. Jed Fish, Lane Kiffin, John Gruden, Eli Drinkowitz, Lance Leipold. Out of those names, I'm not sure really who you end up getting out of that. John Gruden might. I don't think any other guys leave their programs to come to Florida with the dumpster fire it is right now. Football-wise, basketball-wise, you're talking about a great program coming off a national championship, but the football program has been in the dumps for a while. Billy Napier has got to do better as the head coach if he wants to be back there for a 5th season at Florida.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Florida has trended kind of backwards, and to expound off of Lincoln Riley at USC, the same has been true. You talk about 2022 with Caleb Williams going 11-3. 2023 they dropped to 8-5. Last year only 7-6. He has only went 15-11 in conference play for the USC Trojans.
That's horrible.
And for somebody that's playing in a Pee Wee conference in terms of defense, as that's what they don't believe in it, so you can say Pee Wee defense. And for somebody that's drawing an $11.5 million paycheck a year, that seat's got to be burning in Southern California for for Lincoln Riley right now. Maybe not a lot of people consider him on the hot seat, but you look at the numbers and they're not very pretty, Alex.
Not at all. And the last thing before we take a timeout here, KJ, the last little segment is the On the Rise segment. This is another one each week. We're going to come in and pick a player, a coach, or a team that has shown us improvement or come on the scene in the past week or couple of weeks. Who do you have on the rise this week, KJ?
Well, I think I may steal one of yours. I'm going to name 2. For me, I got to give an Alabama player some preps, and I got to give Jeremy Bernard a lot of shout out. I mean, in particular, Ryan Williams goes down, and you just absolutely step up and ball out. I liked Bernard last year, getting looks off of Ryan Williams being double teamed, and I think that's just going to continue when Ryan Williams comes back. I mean, he's climbing up the charts this year in the SEC. And I'll name an Auburn one as well. You talked a little bit about him earlier in the show, but how about the Tigers being tied for leading the nation in sacks at 10 already? Guy that has multiple of those is Kieron Crawford. Similarly on defense, defensive linemen get doubled up sometimes. Keldrick Falk has seen a lot of that, being a late first, early second round projection in next year's draft that he is. And Kieron Crawford has been outstanding already. 2.5 sacks. I think he's up to 4 or 5 tackles for loss just through a few games. He's had a really good season, and if he keeps hitting the hole hard like that from the other side of that Tigers defensive line, Auburn may have something to boast about on defense.
You talked about Jeremy Bernard taking one of my guys, but I'm going to highlight another Alabama receiver who came on the scene this weekend, and Ladazir Brooks. He was a 3-star. He's a 3-star true freshman from Millville, New Jersey. If you looked at all the recruits Alabama got last year, he was not one of the 5-10 guys you looked at and said, yep, he's making an impact as a true freshman. No, he did it in this past weekend against Louisiana Monroe. He got his opportunity with Ryan Williams down with a concussion, and he made the best of it. He's only 5'9" and 191 pounds, so he's not one of those physical specimens you look at that's 6'2", 6'3", like Nick Harbor, 200 pounds, runs a 4'4", 4'2", 4'3", whatever have you. He just goes out and gets the ball. He gets that out of the air. Kalen DeBoer said he's one of the fastest guys on the team, and I was just impressed by what he's able to do in his little short time playing against UL Monroe. I think the ceiling's so high for him, and it just goes to show how deep this Bama receiving room is. because you have Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard, Miami transfer Isaiah Horton, Rico Scott, who's also been on the rise for me. He's been a great blocker, a run blocker. He's done great in the receiving game, and the list goes on. Cole Adams, Derek Meadows, who's 6'5". He's one of those physical specimens. It's just been great to see. And then one more thing before we take a timeout here, KJ. Another team we just have to highlight, we talked about them earlier, Mississippi State beating a ranked number 11 Arizona State team. Nobody expected the Mississippi State to really put up a fight in that game, and they were really out of it in the final moments. It was a Hail Mary heave, and Brennan Thompson got behind the defense of Arizona State and just gone. And if I was a Mississippi State fan, I would just be jumping up and down for joy. That was crazy. And like I said, it's a program-defining win for Jeff Lebby, and Mississippi State is on the rise. They're not going to go 10-2 like I said, but they're turning the program around.
And it's a shot in the arm for the SEC as a whole. I mean, when you say bottom of the barrel of one conference beating a face of another conference, that just does nothing but make the SEC flex its muscles and say, look, you can be upset if you want, but we're still the standard. And Mississippi State just absolutely got back into the game with physicality. They were quick off the ball on the offensive line. Defense hits hard. They've got a few playmakers out wide to boast about, and they've got a coach with a lot to prove, and he's ready, and he's getting the job done. So definitely shout out the Bulldogs. And that'll be it for this segment. We're going to take a quick break and come out with a little bit of recruiting news. You're listening to Full Court Blitz. Welcome back to Full Court Blitz. KJ McCurley alongside Alex Baumann. We've reached the part of our show where we talk about recruiting news, be it basketball or football. Alex, take it away with the recruiting report.
This week we're going to highlight the Alabama Crimson Tide and their basketball team. They landed their first 2 commitments of the 2026 recruiting class, the first one being 4-star Chris Washington Jr., the number 1 player in the state of Tennessee, and the number 41 overall in the ESPN 100. And they also landed wing Terrace Bowie. He is the number 33 ranked player in the ESPN 100. 24/7 Sports, Adam Finkelstein wrote a little synopsis about both these guys, and I haven't seen a lot of tape on them being high school athletes in out-of-state areas. But you have Washington. He talked about him being one of the highest level athletes in this class. And then for Bowie, he said he's undeniably gifted, explosive, but has a lanky frame that needs to put on muscle, as most players do coming into college athletics, football, basketball, baseball, whatever have you. But both, he noted, have issues with efficiency and from the three-point line and even field goal. Both these guys shoot below 40% from three. Bowie even shooting below 30%. And in a NATO's offense, you have to shoot well from three. I have no doubt he'll be able to turn these guys into great shooters from the three-point line as he's done in the past. And the Crimson Tide now are one of just 2 programs in the country with multiple top 50 commits in the 2026 recruiting cycle. It's been outstanding to see what Nate Oates has done with this program. He's now had 5 straight years of ranked recruiting classes, headlined by 2024 when he had the number 3 ranked one, and in 2022 when he had the number 3 ranked one as well.
Yeah, more good recruiting success for the Tide. We're going to take one more break, and when we come back, it'll be That's Tougher Enough, that best part of the show, right here on the Full Court Blitz. Welcome back to Full Court Blitz. KJ McCurley, Alex Baumann. Alex, we've reached the part of our show that everybody comments on. They always think it's funny. We try to inflict some humor with some of these sometimes. That's tough, or is that enough? Are we ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. Starting off number 1, we have 11 ranked SEC football teams in the Week 3 of College Football AP poll. Alex, this has been a record-breaking week as far as rankings for the SEC, 11 of them. And I got to be honest with you, there's a few of them that kind of debatable for me. But overall, is this tough for the SEC, or have you seen a little bit too much and enough of some of the glaze?
I think it's tough. What we saw last week, we've talked about it so many times on the show already. Mississippi State beating the face of the Big 12 and Arizona State. It only proves to me that the SEC is deep. I think really the only bad team in the SEC right now is Kentucky. They're pretty down in the dumps. And you can make an argument for really Vanderbilt to be ranked. Mississippi State, after beating Arizona State, you could argue they should be ranked after this week. Now, will they be ranked towards the end of the season? I don't think so. They'll probably be 6-6, 7-5, 8-4. I don't think they're going to be one of these best teams in the country. Arkansas, you could argue they could be ranked with the way they're playing offense right now.
Florida was just ranked.
Yeah, Florida was just ranked. I mean, there's an argument for you to have 15 of the 16 SEC teams ranked right now, which is crazy. And you can even go to basketball with how good they're playing right now and how many teams were making the tournament last year, set a record for teams in the tournament. So the SEC is not only deep in basketball now, it's deep in football.
Yeah, NIL's had a lot to do with that coming in and leveling the playing field as far as rosters go. But, man, I love this for the SEC as well. I mean, you talk about the teams that are not ranked. We just mentioned 4 of them in Florida, Mississippi State, Vandy, and Arkansas. The only one that leaves is Kentucky that neither of us think is worth any count. I think Texas, interestingly enough, they played the 5 unranked teams.
Lucky dogs.
In the SEC, yeah, so a little bit of help in there from the schedule. But I think it's tough for the league. You'll continue to see good football from, I think, both Auburn and Alabama, even as Auburn starts their tougher road slate of games. Alabama looking very strong. Georgia. And who wants to play Garrett Nussmeier right now in LSU? And who really wants to try to contend with Tennessee's offense? a lot of good teams that would give outside SEC opponents nightmares. So I think it's tough as well. So both of us taking the tough column. And number 2, only 2 points this week, so this one will be pretty interesting. The Bills and Ravens game, by the way, if you missed it, outstanding football game. Really got things going in the right direction for the NFL. The Ravens lost to the Bills. Buffalo winning 41-40. Buffalo overcomes a fourth quarter 15-point deficit for just the 3rd time in team history. Baltimore became the first team in NFL history to lose when scoring 40 or more and rushing for 235 or more.
Never want to be the first in anything in football or basketball or any sport.
Wow, I'm telling you what, man. Alex, is this more of a tough comeback for the Buffalo Bills, or have we just seen enough contender title talk with the Baltimore Ravens?
It's tough with the Bills being able to come back in this game because it looked grim for a while. People were already saying Bills are done. This roster is not going to be able to contend this year, and then it took a whole 180 after they came back. Oh my gosh, Josh Allen's the MVP this year. He's going to play. He's playing great football. The defense stood up when they need to. But the Ravens, I think that's enough for one player in particular. Jair Alexander needs to go on and hang it up. If you watch that game, he was burnt toast in those final 4 minutes of the football game when the Bills ended up coming back. You can just watch the clips of him getting his ankles broken on routes when the players didn't even have the ball in their hands. It's enough of him. Hang it up, Jair Alexander. You had a great career. You're just ruining your legacy right now playing the way you are. But it's tough for the Bills and their ability to come back in this game because it shows you that they're ready to contend and win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I love Josh Allen. He's my fantasy quarterback, and he's the only reason I didn't lose by 30 or more this past week. Man, my skill players.
He's the only reason the Bills didn't lose by 30 or more this week or last week.
The skill players not showing up. And how good does this look for the front office of the Bills? You know, a few years back, opting not to re-sign Diggs and then opting not to go after Gabe Davis back again. And Gabe Davis turned out to have not so good of a year for the Jaguars. So it's like another good series of events. They've got some really young athletic receivers, most notably in Coleman. And I really just like the team. I think they're tough as well. I do think the Ravens, as far as contender talks, we need to stop it for right now. But Lamar just doesn't have consistent help outside of Zay Flowers.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing I saw as I was watching the game, and then you look at the stat sheet afterward, and stat sheets aren't everything. If you have to watch the game to see it. But outside of Zay Flowers and Derrick Henry and the one-handed grab that DeAndre Hopkins had, there was no offense to speak of for the Baltimore Ravens. Then you flip over to the defense. That was an awful defensive performance in that fourth quarter. They just fell apart, and that was the story for them last year. Zach Orr, the defensive coordinator, who's I think the youngest defensive coordinator in the NFL, former Raven himself, he's got to do better as a coach, and the players have to execute better.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Buffalo did everything right, and Baltimore did everything wrong to end the game. For that being the last point of Tougher Enough, we both think it's a tough Bills comeback. And KJ McCurley, Alex Baumann, this has been Full Court Blitz. Tune in next week.